Thank you for joining us today. We're hoping that you take away a tip or two to help you with your business. My guest today is somebody that I've had on the podcast before. So excited to have him. He has a great resource of information. He was a Fortune 50 executive, Silicon Valley startups involved in that, and then actually left that industry and started his own pool service company. He found that interesting and started it up by himself. He was the only employee at the time, and then build that up to 50 employees and then servicing residential and commercial pools. Probably a little over 2,000 a week were serviced. And then he decided to retire and live the good life and sold his business. So thank you so much, Fred, for joining us. We really appreciate you giving us some of your knowledge and helping us along.
You're welcome. I'm glad to help and give back to the industry.
You bet. So on my website, mkconsultingservices.com, Fred and I have an article out there in regards to how to hire your first employee. Now, this really relates to anybody who's a one-man show or one-woman show, and they decide, you know what, I've reached a point where I can't do any more on my own, and I have to make a decision if I'm just going to be okay with, my current revenue, or if I really want to grow and scale. And so the goal of that particular article was to talk about how do you really prepare to hire your first person. Mm-hmm. And Fred Ross, we had him on the Pool Pro podcast a while ago, and this is a topic that I want to explore some more. So Fred, again, thank you again for coming on. Can you talk a little bit about, preparing for hiring your first person? Because you obviously have done this with at least 40 some employees. What do you have to offer that's going to help us move forward?
Sure. Well, Michelle, what's interesting is the first employee is the very hardest.
Yes.
Employee number 2 is just as hard. And the reasons is many guys, I don't care what trade you're in, the first pool, they struggle because, well, he doesn't do it as good as I do. He doesn't do it the way that I do. I might as well, if you want it done right yourself, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. There's a lot of that goes through their minds. And so you've got to make sure that you're approaching this properly with your attitude has to be such that, okay, I understand that whoever I hire is never going to do it as good as I do it myself. Okay. That's kind of the first thing you got to get in your mind. And then secondly, have you really thought about the financial impact on yourself?
Yeah.
So, are you going to grow your business? You got to make a real commitment to this because it's going to take a while to train an employee. To train, it's going to take a long time. So you have to factor that in that you've only got so much revenue coming in. Yeah. In many cases, that means you personally, whatever you were taking out of the business every month, you're not going to be able to take out. So if it takes you a month to replace that, because you bring on a guy and he takes over your routes and then you go out and do repairs and you start bringing on more customers. Hey, maybe you can do it in a month and it only cost you 1 month's salary of your new guy. Maybe it's $4,000 or $5,000, right?
Right.
But if it takes longer to get more customers, or it takes longer to replace that revenue to pay for yourself, it could be months. That 5 could turn into 10, 15, 20, 25, $30,000 real quick.
Yeah. So preparing is really important then.
Yes. Your financial planning is very important.
Yeah, it really is.
Know where every dollar's coming from and every dollar is going. And if you don't have that accounting system or that level of detail in place, do that first before you even think about hiring the first guy.
Absolutely. And for those of you who need assistance doing that, you can go to my website, mkconsultingservices.com. I have an actual package out there where I help you with forecasting and goal setting. Be happy to help you. Just schedule a call with me and anytime that you're available. So Fred, let's talk about managing expenses for a second, because in the second step of hiring your first employee, we talked about, building a tight route and then managing expenses and then building capital. So let's talk about managing expenses. I think this is so important. This is important whether you hire your first person or not. I hope that everybody out there is looking at their expenses every single month. They're looking at the revenue and expenses and determining if there's ways to switch things up. I don't know about you, Fred, but for me personally, even with my business expenses or my personal expenses, I try to cut wherever I can cut. So I look at my expenses buckets every single, maybe if not every month, it's certainly every couple of months. And I figured, I'm spending too much money here. Let's figure out a way to move that or whatever. So I'm hoping everybody's doing that. But let's talk about how when you're preparing to hire your first employee, how does manage expenses help you do that?
Okay, good question.
Yes.
So, This is a life lesson, not just a business lesson. As you said, Michelle, you have got to know where the dollars are coming from.
Yep.
You've got to know where the dollars are going. And we used to call it holes in the bucket. And if you got money going out of your bucket and you know where it's going, you got a leaky bucket. So no matter how hard you work putting more water in the bucket, if it's leaking out faster than you're putting it in, you're just spinning your wheels. So you've got to know where every dollar goes. And you'd be surprised at how just trying to become aware of it, just tracking it, just knowing, what did I spend money on last month? How much did I actually spend on my truck and repairs and gas? How much did I actually spend on, maybe insurance is pretty easy, maybe it isn't. But how much did I spend at SCP? How much did I spend at the wholesalers?
Yeah.
How much did it really cost me? Okay. What is my cost per mile on my truck? The IRS may say it's one number, 53, 54, 55 cents a mile. Well, what if yours is $2 a mile? Because
right.
You got a truck that gets 10 miles per gallon and gas is $6 a gallon. So you have to know your numbers. It's not enough to say, oh, I'm just average or my numbers are about the same as everybody else. No, you got to know yours. And then you've got to know how much windshield time are you spending in between clients. Like we talked about having a tight ride. Well, the more you're driving from one to another is raising your costs. So as you're thinking about managing that, you're like, oh, what if I did get rid of this one customer that's way out here and tightened up my route? Wow. Not only does it make my route easier to run, but look how much money I'm saving over here. Maybe that customer really was not profitable at all. We all fall into this trap of thinking, oh, I'm going to build up this whole other neighborhood over here. And I've just got this one outlier customer and I'm going to pick up 6 more in that neighborhood. And maybe you do, and maybe you don't.
Right.
But there are times in your growth where you got to pull back on that and say, maybe now's not the time. Maybe I need to cut that outlier loose, tighten
right.
my out, reduce my expenses, and I'll be ready to go for my first employee.
We talked about, I think, as an estimate. Now, keep in mind this is just a ballpark here because we realize everybody is in different markets and different wages and things like that. But we just put it in the article that we have on our website, mkconsultingservices.com. We have an article in regards to how to hire your first employee. In there, we estimated that it might be in California, in Fred's area, maybe $5,000 a month is what you can expect for your first hire. And so that's an example of when you get your numbers together and put them in your forecast and things together, then you can plug that number in based on whatever month you're trying to hire that person. And then you can start determining, okay, what do my financials look like at that point? And you can decide, okay, I'm going to have to do this and I'm going to have to do this, or I'm going to, those types of things to determine. You can also prepare yourself. So if you have to take a salary cut for a couple of months, then you can plan effectively prior to that happening to be able to make sure you're okay. You can pay your bills and all of that. Correct, Fred?
Exactly. So if I use that example, let's say it's $5,000 a month to hire your first employee. Well, if you're only keeping or taking out of your company right now $5,000 a month, that means that first month you're going to have to live on nothing. Can you live on nothing for a month? How are you going to pay your rent and your mortgage, your bills and everything else? Do you have a significant other, spouse or something that's going to pay the bills? So you can say, okay, I don't need any money for a month. But you have to plan for that. Maybe you've saved up that. If you had to save up for that 1 month, say, yeah, well, I've got 5,000 set aside. That's something to use to pay my bills that month. And is that enough? Is it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? I would suggest you got to have at least 3 months set aside.
Yes. Right? I say 6, but I get you. Yeah.
Six, that's a lot. That's a pretty big nut, having 30 grand sitting there and you go, well, that's really hard if you're $5 grand a month. And, so you kind of maybe have a little bit, can you borrow some if you had to? Worst case scenario, have your plan A, plan B, and plan B set aside and say, all right, I got 10, 15,000. I've saved that up. I've got it in a little account over here. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to need it to pay my own personal bills, rent, expenses, whatever, if I have to. But maybe I have a credit card that I haven't touched or some other, way to get some money over here, business loan, whatever. Well, I don't want to do that, but if I had to, I could. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
3 months. And then
right
now I got my plan for how I got 6 months worth of money here, worst case scenario. Then, of course, you work every day to make sure you can do it in 1 month and not 6 months. But to Michelle's point is you've got to plan for that. Okay.
You
Now,
certainly do.
revenue forecasting has got to be part of this.
Yep.
You're not going to bring on that first employee and go, okay, well, I got 70 accounts and that's it. I don't want any more customers. No, that's not the whole point.
That's the whole point of hiring.
The whole point. So how fast do you think you're going to bring on new ones? Can you bring them on faster because now you have more time to knock on doors and respond to phone calls and respond to requests for bids and go out and get more customers, or go door to door and hand out flyers, or spend more time on social media trying to drum up more customers? That's the whole point. And how fast do you bring that on? Is it going to be another 2, 3, 4, or 5 a month? You've got to project that out and think, okay, when am I going to start paying for myself again? I can take my $5,000 out of the business again. And you keep going with that. And you think, when do I get to the point where I need employee number 2? Oh, when am I going to get to 140 pools? Or when am I going to get to the next revenue milestone if I'm in a different trade? So that I bring on that second person. And now maybe the second time around, it's not quite such of a hit.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, I'm bringing in enough that maybe now I'm only going to take a couple $1,000s a month hit to my personal income.
Right.
Ramp up employee number 2 and continue to bring on more customers. And for person number 3, 4, or 5, you finally will have enough volume to the point that every extra person you bring on is putting more money in your pocket. You're not having to take any more personal income. That's why I say those first 2 are really the hardest.
The hardest. Yes. You really have to jump off the cliff and say, I'm going for it because I really want to grow this business and I got to do it. You have to just really have faith and believe that you can do it. The other thing I want to bring up, which Fred and I talked about separately, is if you don't have an accountant or a CPA, doing your financials for you, I highly recommend that you have that. Because I think it's so important. I don't know. I'm not claiming to be an expert in regards to either, taxes or finances, and as accounting, laws and things change. So I have somebody that does that. And also, by the way, there's an app called Wave app, WAVE app, Wave apps. You can go to the website. That's a free service you can use. I use it, and you can put it on your phone, and then it actually puts all your charges from your business account right there. And you just do a quick click, upload the receipt, and you can do a quick click and put it in the expense bucket that you want. It's just a drop-down menu. You pick the expense bucket, so you can code your expenses. My accountant does that for me, so I don't have to worry about that. But if you want to do it yourself, you can, and just have them for, helping with financials when you have it, or just doing your taxes, whatever it may be. You can actually make them you can give them access to your Wave Apps account, but they can't get into your business account or anything like that. So that's what I do. And I think it's such a good service because, again, that Wave Apps is free. You don't pay for that. It's a free service. And that's a way for you to start, kind of managing your expenses and looking at them and coding them correctly. And if you want to hire somebody to do that, you can as well. We're hoping that you had some takeaways here in regards to managing expenses. We appreciate your time today, and look for us on our next episode where we talk about building capital and be able to handle it from that side of it, making sure that you have the money available to grow your business. We appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you soon.
A new voice in the industry, a resource for all, education for you. This is Pool Pro Podcast. Build relationships and share important news as we get ready for our next backyard adventure. Pool Pro Podcast. Backyard adventures are better together. Please take a moment to share, like, and review our content with all of those that would be interested.